Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers on the broadcast today, coming to you from Washington, D.C. Congressman Mark Amodei for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management offers workers' comp services to a growing number of industries. As businesses grow and change with the times, the need for a solid workers' comp program must be flexible and up to date. The evolving nature of regulations can make staying ahead of complex tasks challenging. But Pro Group Management simplifies the work so your industry can move forward and succeed. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Truck drivers are some of the hardest working people you'll meet, delivering over 70% of America's freight and 92% of Nevada's. When there's a natural disaster, they're delivering critical supplies to help those communities recover and rebuild. Every sector of the economy and our nation's military rely on truck drivers. So let's take a moment to say thank you. On the open road or city streets, our truck drivers are rolling to make our economy and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
Nevada Newsmakers Goes to Washington is brought to you by the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, your RTC, our community. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. Compassion, accountability, integrity, respect. The Nevada Mining Association, mining a better future for Nevada. And NV Energy. NV Energy proudly serves Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Washington, D.C. We are delighted, as always, to welcome back to the program Congressman Mark Amodei in good health.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the swamp.
Thank you very much. I'll try to stay out of it as best I can.
Good idea.
All right, so let's turn serious right away, which is the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You know, I think the thing that shocked me more than the headlines was, you know, we've been told, you know, for a long time now, it was 2,500 troops, 3,500 troops, somewhere in that neighborhood, and suddenly we're evacuating over 100,000 people, and we're leaving behind tens of thousands more. I'm presuming these are contractors as well as people working with our troops. Did that number surprise you? Because it sure as heck surprised me.
Well, Sam, I think the backdrop, and I'm not going to pick just on this administration.
No.
But the backdrop in D.C. right now for a number of years, and probably it predates the last administration. The credibility factor has gotten so low because everybody is so focused on their political agenda or what they want their political reality to be, that the actual facts about it, this is a foreign policy and military, the actual facts have become subservient to a phenomenal degree, and this is the latest example of, it's like, hey, this was a failure of planning, it was a failure of everything. I mean, the only folks you can tip your hat to is, well, on almost no notice, you were able to get a heck of a lot of people from point A to point B, but it still wasn't enough airlift to get all the people that should have out there. And so people look, there are certain baseline things. We're supposed to take care of veterans. We're supposed to take care of our own folks in a foreign policy. You know, remember what it was in Benghazi? Oh my God, that was what, 6 people or something? This is, you know, tens of thousands. And it's like, we don't fail at this stuff. It's like, yeah, we do, I guess, now.
All right, so back to my original question, though. Were you aware of how many tens of thousands?
No.
So you, as a sitting congressman over a long period of time, were uninformed as to the level of, because what strikes me here, it's not long ago that I watched a movie on the Pentagon Papers. And that was a story, for those that don't know this, and they should Google it or watch the movie because it's an incredible story, was we had multiple presidents who didn't want to concede that the Vietnam War was lost.
Yep.
And it seems like we are in a similar situation now of where multiple presidents knew, as close to President George W. Bush up to present day, that this was a no-winnable situation and we should have gotten out a long time ago.
Well, Sam, if you sit down and look back at the Middle East, starting with the Iran hostages, this is 4 decades. I mean, it's never been, no disrespect, it's never been mission accomplished. This has always been a phenomenally challenging part of the world for us because it's a cultural thing. They don't want our resources. They simply want us not to exist. And that's been for 40 years. And so, it's ebbed and flowed. But when you say, back in Vietnam, they didn't want to admit the war was lost. This was something where we have failed to come up with a policy that allows us to maintain the sanctity of our borders in a safety sense, and it's like, so, 9/11 was the most recent one. I don't think it's crazy to say this was a base of operation for terrorist threats to our homeland in our homeland. And so you can say we get the troops out or whatever, but that's probably the right thing to do. But you have to maintain some level of security from threats for that part of the world. And so what that is open to discussion. But to just say we're done and I'm declaring, that I'm the guy who got us out of there, that isn't going to solve the ultimate problem that we have struggled with, Sam, for over 4 decades now.
All right, but are you disagreeing with the decision? Because President Trump, if he had been reelected, would have gotten us out.
This is the irony. This is something, neither one of them will say it. Joe Biden and Donald Trump agree on that. And I agree with it too. It's like, hey, the 1st Armored Division, the 2nd, Infantry Division, whatever the heck, doesn't need to be in Afghanistan. But you cannot pretend like the threat doesn't exist. And you say, well, what is that? It's like, well, that's a good thing for those folks over in the Pentagon and the State Department stuff to go, what's the deal so we can have some level of security so that you're not flying 757s into office buildings like the Pentagon or the Twin Towers or wherever the other one was, maybe the U.S. Capitol. It's like, that is not acceptable either. So this bit where it's like, we're pulling the troops out, it's like, that's fine as far as the troops go. But as far as the national security thing, that's one of the most dangerous areas of and it's, Sam, the frustrating thing you hear in my voice is, it's been 40 years. And we're still struggling with it. It's like, hey.
But isn't the reality, and I'm talking, this is not a partisan point of view, I'm just saying from the reality that we are very good at figuring out what happened, but we are incredibly bad at figuring out what is going to happen.
Well, I don't disagree with that. But that doesn't mean that it's like, well, we're not good at that, so let's concentrate on something else. And I say that, especially in this context, because people who did nothing other than go to work that day were basically mixed up in a threat that came from offshore and was brought home to, a couple of the largest metropolitan areas in the country.
And obviously no one would disagree with you about that and the lives that were lost and the tragedy that occurred and that this country has been paying the price of, and those families have been paying the price of for so many years. I wanted to just throw in, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but your thoughts, because this has been the talk of Washington and the country, of General Mark Milley's discussion with his Chinese counterpart. Do you think that was appropriate, inappropriate?
I don't know what the discussion was, and I'll be brief. I don't know what the discussion was. I don't find it unusual that people at that level would probably talk from time to time, but I think if you take a look at some of the I think it's spin. If the general called up and said, "Hey, I'm afraid we're going to be tossing some nukes over the horizon or something like that, but I'll let you know beforehand," then if that's a fact, that's phenomenally wrong. But Sam, I'll tell you, in the present atmosphere, I don't know that to be a fact yet. So the fact that they talk from time to time is something that I was like, well, that doesn't surprise me much. I would assume that they do. The question is, what did they talk about? Because as you know from your background, and many people do, a president can't just wake up one morning and say, hey, I think I've had about enough of that. I'm going to go ahead and send, I'm going to have one of those boomer subs come up to launch depth and toss a few whatever. There's a phenomenal process there that's not just one person can do it. So that part of the story where it's like, if he decides to do it, I'm going to warn you, is like, that's at odds with, you can't do that, even as the President of the United States. So that's why I'm going, this doesn't all line up with what the actual protocols are within this government for doing something like that.
All right, and just one other thing. I'm sorry, I'm extending this rather longer than I thought I would. But that's something that bothers me a lot in discussions with people who are not really aware that Washington, D.C. is not one person.
Yeah.
That there are tens of thousands of people in this city that are making decisions every day, and it is not one person 24 hours a day making the deciding decision on all these things.
Because if it is one person doing it, they're probably breaking some rules and messing up, and especially something that serious. Mark Amodei, if I was the President of the United States, couldn't go, I'm going to get those guys over there and take that. It's just not reality in terms of those protocols and procedures.
All right, let's take a break. We'll be back more with Congressman Mark Amodei after this timeout.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and Twitter. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Events Center in Las Vegas. Host meetings and events on 2 floors. Stay in luxurious rooms and suites. Unlimited branding opportunities. Regional Italian cuisine by Chef Mark Segrisi. Flexible event spaces. Full buyout options. Visit ahernhotel.com today.
I'm Jeff Gehrman, an investigative reporter with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm your guide for Season 2 of Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas.
You're in with every gangster and hoodlum in the United States.
I don't go for that, Mr. Kennedy. I don't go for that kind of action.
I was on television accused of fronting for the mob.
Subscribe to Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, Season 2, today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Kenny! Dad? Are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this.
Wow! This stuff is great! People are gonna love it!
Yes. Yes, they will.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and YouTube. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Washington, D.C. We continue our conversation with Congressman Mark Amodei. On this program a couple of years ago, Senator Reid, who was retired at the time, said that the tipping point had already been reached for the debt. And now we're in the process of not adding billions, hundreds of billions, but trillions of dollars to the national debt. Your thoughts on this? And it's always going to be paid for, and yet it never is.
Yeah. And I think that's worn out to the point where it's like, quit believing that. Well, we found this, we found that. It's like, well, it's either been found before and gone, or if that money materializes, it's sucked off in a different direction. So it's not paid for, and we continue adding to that. And so one of the things that we're looking into is like, hey, just a 1 point change in the interest rate is going to be what part of servicing that debt? Because it's been kind of free money for a long time now. It's like when that starts going, makes you wonder if the Federal Reserve's major motivation is not to blow up the budget in terms of debt service rather than all that other sort of stuff.
Okay, so all right, so that leads into an interesting point right there, which is, so if a bill was to be signed tomorrow, it would not be maintained at this almost 0% interest rate. As interest rates were raised by the Fed, that would actually raise the debt services. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Then that's horrendous.
Yeah. I mean, you're sitting there going, come on. That's like a variable rate credit card. Remember those? Where it was like, hey, you're going to start out at this percentage rate, but we get to adjust it, adjustable rate personal credit card. And you're like, holy moly, the rate went to... And so I'll just tell you this, that the economists are all dead in D.C. as far as policy making stuff, because I don't understand how you can continue to sustain increasing this at ever increasing rates and just handle that debt service, much less, oh, now we're going to start paying off the principal.
All right, so, at this point, because of the reconciliation process, Mitch McConnell has said, okay, that's all on the Democrats. You guys got to get it done because we want to have no part of that. Yeah. But Republicans are not holding back on putting money towards all different kinds of things.
Well, as we speak today, they're considering with the debt service or with the debt ceiling, throwing in the disaster relief with it, and a few other things which are not necessarily...
Immigration.
Well,
that got blown out by the
Afghanistan evac costs, all that, we're throwing all this into where it's like, so once again, we're playing political games with guns with real bullets in them in terms of, hey, the end result here is because you want to build your empire and you want to build your empire, and we've got some unforeseen stuff come. So you just add it all on. Sam, I think to be honest with you, I think the culture is a belief that this will go along until after I'm out of office, so let Sam Shad deal with it when he's the speaker or the majority leader.
But this was what got governments and the motor companies in Detroit into trouble, which was that all these incredible deals were cut when people knew that they were going to no longer be the CEO and chairman of the corporation, or the union boss or the person in office. And suddenly you have trillions of unfunded costs.
Hey, I hope I'm wrong. That's my belief from seeing it for a while now, where it's like, hey, they just think it's not going to happen on their watch. So they're going to continue to, you're going to continue to drive that car even though you know that it needs a quart of oil or 2 quarts, and you're like, it'll still go until I'm done with it. And then when the engine seizes up, it won't matter because I don't need that car anymore.
All right, so I've said on the program before, and we've probably discussed it ourselves, which is that the ones who are totally getting screwed right now are senior citizens. Because if they've saved all their lives for retirement, they're getting 0% interest rates on that money. What's the next thing to fall? If you've already gotten senior citizens in trouble who did the right thing all their lives by saving, what's the next shoe that drops?
You and I are those senior citizens now where it's like, hey, pay your house off, save your money, maybe some stocks, maybe a little bit of property, you'll be okay. Not anymore. By the way, you don't know what your health care costs are going to be. So even if you've done all that stuff, you may not have enough. So I'm just looking at this from the viewpoint of what culture are you creating, Sam? Because you've got down there too where a culture where it's like, quite frankly, if you know what all the deals are, you may be able to pay your specifics of rent, utility bills, all that other sort of stuff without working. I mean, that's not I'm not going to blame it all on COVID, but a lot of that COVID relief stuff had an unintended consequence of people who were offering jobs were competing with government programs. And so you've got at that end of the spectrum, people who are like, well, I don't care because somebody else will end up handling it for me. At the end of the spectrum that I'm closer to, it's like, hey, I did all the stuff I'm supposed to do, so now I should be okay. And you're like, that's not the reality either. I think, quite frankly, that the federal folks in D.C. with their fiscal policy over the last, let's just pick a number, 50 years, have quite frankly been incredibly irresponsible with their whole view towards this, we're just going to keep spending. And this is the part, Sam, that's hard to fathom, at a faster rate than we have. I remember him criticizing the Obama administration for the rate at which they got to it compared to everybody in front of them. Well, guess what? That rate now doesn't make the junior varsity spending team. I mean, that rate has increased even more since then, and especially now. But you know what, Sam? Until it becomes sexy, for people to say, I will absolutely hold the line on this stuff, but it's gonna hurt. Nobody's doing that that's running for office.
You know, as I drive into Washington, D.C. this past weekend, and I see all these homeless tents on the bridges, and it's starting to be where D.C. is looking more like San Francisco and L.A. We are foreshadowing something that is disastrous, and it's going to be senior citizens that take the first hit. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more after this timeout.
Get in on the Tamarack Casino's $175,000 Hidden Treasures Guaranteed giveaway now through September 30th. Earn entries in the weekly drawings and win big during the two $35,000 grand prize giveaways. Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Get in on the Tamarack Casino's $175,000 Hidden Treasures Guaranteed giveaway now through September 30th. Earn entries in the weekly drawings and win big during the two $35,000 grand prize giveaways. Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
Nevada Newsmakers Goes to Washington is brought to you by the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, your RTC, our community. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. Compassion, accountability, integrity, respect. The Nevada Mining Association, mining a better future for Nevada. And NV Energy. NV Energy proudly serves Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Congressman Mark Amodei. Redistricting in Nevada, what does it look like?
Well, you know, the legislature will be where everybody has their fun when you're talking about, 42 districts and 21 districts between the two houses, that sort of stuff. You know, the congressional stuff is pretty much, you don't get much wiggle room in that. So it's like, here's your population, you got 4 seats, divide by 4, you can't vary very much between that. You've had phenomenal growth in Las Vegas over the last 10 years, like 78%. Washoe's grown like 16%. So you'll be having some shuffling in those, I think, in those lines between the 3 seats that are centered in Vegas. Ours, I think, everybody's, well, what do you, and it's like, I don't think anybody's going to draw a 400-mile long cherry stem to try to get some of the Washoe precincts down south.
Okay, so not a north-south, because I've seen maps that look like that.
Yeah, quite frankly, you have to do a lot of violence to the districts everywhere in the state to get that done.
Okay, what kind of input do you have into this process for redistricting your district?
You know what? Pretty much none. I mean, the legislature does it. And so last time they had a commission, I remember Bob Erickson, Alan Glover, some of those guys were on it, but they never called us. So I wouldn't expect to be testifying in front of the legislature for next time. I think they kind of, you need 4 districts with the same number of people, not voters, people. And so I expect they'll do that. With the population growth, especially in Vegas, they'll be kind of large for congressional districts nationwide, but I expect ours to maybe grow a little bit in terms of getting some acres back. But we'll see.
From the announcements in the last couple of weeks, it looks like you're going to run for your House seat once again?
Well, no, actually, we're keeping all options open.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I don't recall announcing. Did I miss one of my announcements in the last couple
No,
weeks?
but it just seemed that, some of your comments recently to the Reno Gazette-Journal appeared that...
Well, I'm frustrated. Part of the reason I delayed is like, listen, I'm a team player in that stuff, and so you're looking for a candidate to come along that, quite frankly, takes all the air out of the room and is like, there you go. It's my opinion, no disrespect to anybody. I'm a respectful guy. Nobody's taking all the air out of the room. I mean, it's like you've got, how many people have you got now? 6, 8, something like that. I'll just cut it short by saying the happiest guy in the state right now has got to be Steve Sisolak.
Yes, I wouldn't disagree with you there. No.
And rightfully so, the way things sit right now.
Have you had any thoughts about a U.S. Senate race against
No.
Catherine Cortez Masto?
And you know, you say, well, why? It's like, I don't know. I just never aspired, especially being back here, to say, hey, the natural progression is to go over there. It's like, I'm not so sure that's a natural progression anymore. No disrespect to anybody over there or those that want to go there. It's just one of those things that that has not attracted me the more I've gotten to see of it.
Okay, so with Dean Heller, former senator, jumping into the governor's race, that has not put you off at this point?
No.
When are you going to make the decision?
Well, I said I would by the end of October. And so,
date?
Huh?
Is that still the date?
Well, it is as of towards the end of September. But I think in fairness, you have to say what you're going to do so that other people who are affected by that have a chance to think about what they want to do and stuff like that. So even though it's not really prevalent in this business these days, it's like I think you need to be responsible with that instead of just saying, well, maybe or whatever. And I think at some point in time, the well maybe becomes, well, if you were going to. But I'll tell you this, I am not taken with the field so far.
And that's where we have to leave it. Congressman Mark Amodei, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you. We'll be right back. Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hi, my name's Marilyn Miner, and I'm sure you'd agree that Nevada's a very special place to live. I was born here, and my husband and I have raised our family here. I feel it's a privilege to live and work in the Truckee Meadows. I especially enjoy helping my clients reach their real estate goals. Sometimes the smallest details provide the greatest satisfaction. I'd be complimented to talk to you about your next move.
Call Marilyn Miner at Dixon Realty, 742-1280, or log on to marilynminer.com.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
We'll see you on the next broadcast, coming to you from Washington, D.C. as we interview our congressional delegation. See you then.